And I'm sure, and I just see our president of the board, Deb Oriola, walking in. I'm not sure if there's any other members of the board present here. And Barbara Morrow is on her way in, another member of the Board of Education. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over. We have Deb Foley, our co-president of the PTO, and I'm going to turn it over to David Atkarian, the other co-president of the PTO. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Oh, we're in the building. Mrs. Byrne, sorry. I was joking with her today that I've been in the principal's office more in the last week than I ever have in school, and I think that's a good thing. But it's, yeah, eyes are getting bad here. Let's see. I just want to give a quick agenda for tonight. Thank everybody for coming, especially on a Friday night. I'm sure there's someplace else we would all rather be. With that in mind, our goal is to make the evening go as swiftly as we can. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The district has some information that they're going to present, which has been based on, I would say, the collective of questions that I have received and other members have received, which we want to get some answers to, which they're going to present a collection of that. Once that is completed, we will have a time for public comment. Please understand that this really is not a question and answer session. There are board members here, there are district members here, but this isn't an official board meeting, so we have to be respectful of that. If they feel that they can answer a question or that they would like to make a comment, they certainly are free to do that, but that's definitely not back and forth Q&A tonight. If you do wish to make a comment or ask a question, we will be taking notes. All this information will be forwarded, as well as I know the folks from the district and the Board of Education are taking notes as well. All this will be forwarded to them. The next board meeting will be on the 28th, which is next Tuesday night. So hopefully we will see some response from that as well. I think also the reality is if we ask 112 questions tonight, we can't expect 112 answers to show up. So we have to be patient with that and do the best that we can. During the question and answer, or during the public speaking, I would ask that you could try to keep to 3 minutes. We have a lot of people here tonight. If a lot of folks want to get up and talk, I know we all probably have family to get back to because we're in elementary school. And let's see, anything else? I would expect the audience to keep it respectful, and I wouldn't expect anything less from our Birchwood community because we do have a great community here at Birchwood. I will try very hard not to be the bad guy with the cane to pull you off the podium, but I may wave at you and give you a little, hey, there we go, perfect. I may give you the little 3-minute mark to say, hey, you've been up there for a while, so let's get on to the next person. So, again, thank you for coming. I hope you find tonight informative. The PTO members are here. We have name tags. If you have questions and you would like to get us a side ever, please feel free. That's what we're here for. Although I joke that I signed up to do bake sales, not talk about closing schools, but that's okay. We do what we have to do. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Salaggio to come up and give their presentation, and then we'll work from there. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank Dave and Deb Foley and Deb for making the invitation to the district office administrators to be here tonight. They have provided us with 6 questions that were generated from a parent meeting that was held the other night, and we'll make an effort to answer those 6 questions. I'm sure that those are only a few of the questions that you might have, and our goal is to try to answer those 6 questions, answer any other questions that you have tonight, but also to kind of script those questions so that if they need to be answered moving forward, we try to answer that and take care of that on Tuesday evening in the presentation that's made there. I would like to start, I think, first by introducing the 2 board members who are here, and I know that chairs have been placed up here so that our board members can be up front if they would choose to be. Our board president is here, Deb Oriola, board member Barbara Morrow, I think there will be there's at least one other board member coming, but you know, as they come in, we'll shepherd them up here if they would like to do that. And I'd like to invite Deb and Matt and Ron to come on up front and sit with us as well, if you'd like to do that. We have chairs up here for you, so we don't standing. And I think since I don't know that you have these questions or not, I think as we go through them, I'm just going to introduce the question that we were asked and then attempt to answer them, and the cabinet will be assisting with that. So the first question was about a long-term sustainability plan. Essentially, the question was, where is it? And I want to share with you that the community is well aware that the Facilities Utilization Advisory Committee began its work last June after being charged in March by the Board of Education with the task of looking at student enrollments, school facilities, the academic program, and really considering for the long term what some possibilities for consideration would be that would best meet the needs of our student population. Almost simultaneously with that process, which began in June, and that process ended in December with a report to the Board of Education at a board meeting, almost simultaneously the board began its work on strategic planning with our GE facilitator, Ron Frank. That work is continuing, that work is not finished, but certainly these recommendations and the issue of school configuration and most importantly academic program and the quality of sustained academic program have been part of the consideration of the board, a major part of the consideration of the board in developing that strategic plan. On Tuesday evening, we anticipate that we will be sharing with our school community the main components of the drafted strategic plan as the board has done that work so far. The components of a strategic plan, a sustainability plan for a district have, there are multiple parts to that. Certainly there's a financial plan, and you know that we're funded somewhere in the low 20 percentile by state aid, 23% or so. So that's a component. What the state decides to do with state aid is important and impacts our planning. Our local community supports the majority of the school program through school taxes, and that's important. Part of the sustainability plan also has to be revenue generation, and there's been, as you know, if you've been coming to board meetings and following our website, a lot of conversation about revenue generation and what that looks like. So those are all components of that. In addition to that, all of that, another component regarding the sustainability plan has to be the academic program itself, what we offer to schools. And I would like to ask Deb Shea if she would speak around the issue of sustainability of academic program.
Good evening, everyone. So I had a recent experience last week and today that I really wanted to share with you, and it really goes to the heart of taking the long view. So we're working very hard. One of our board members is very interested in distance learning, and we know that if schools are to sustain themselves and maintain programs and even grow programs, that we have to do that with partnerships, and we have to do that with partnerships with universities, with GE, and with other schools, and with universities and colleges. And so we have begun a partnership with 3 other districts to use distance learning at our high school. And the purpose of that is to try to maintain our wonderful, rich program at our high school and perhaps even add electives. So I'm sharing this because as much as this hurts so much, I'm asking you to consider when your children get to the high school, would you want and expect for them to have the same caliber of program that our students have now? And similarly, would you want them to have a similar program or maybe even a better program than some of our very similar districts in the capital region? And so let me go back to the story that I began these comments with. And that is that, so this afternoon at 2 o'clock, I met with these 3 other districts, and we were comparing our programs of study. And we compared them a week ago. And so we were trying to make a decision about what are some opportunities for us to export classes through distance learning and for us to import classes from using distance learning technology. And so I have to say that I was humbled
by the quality and quantity of the electives at other high schools. And so it's important, while we have, you know what our ranking is in terms of the capital region, and we're so proud of the rigor of our professional teaching staff and the quality of our programs and all of you and our kids, I'm sharing that because it's also important for us to maintain program and even grow program. And so it's not okay from someone in my office. I get really competitive with these things. I mean, I don't like picking up the Times Union and seeing another district outdoing us on anything. So I know that's an important value for you. And so I'm asking that you consider the long view here as we look to sustain and grow program in this unit. So, and I just want to add to Doug's statement that as the FUAC committee did its work and as the board began its consideration of strategic planning, the number one and most important aspect of the FUAC planning and the strategic planning was both to maintain and to grow a strong and viable academic program for our children, K-12. And so that's a critical factor that's important in the element of a sustainability plan. So I hope if you can be at the board meeting Tuesday night, I encourage you to do that. If you can't be at the board meeting on Tuesday night, I know that following that board meeting, the information that's been shared on strategic planning will be posted. And I'm also confident that as the work continues in strategic planning, that future information will continue to not only be posted on the website, but also discussed at the Board of Education meetings. And we want to go to our second question, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Good evening, everyone. The second question that we had posed to us earlier in preparation for this evening was, what is our cost analysis sheet, or how much does it cost to run each building? And really, when we started this process and we started to look through all of this, we really, you know, the cost to operate a building is dependent on the number of staffing that you have in the building, the square footage of the building, how much it costs for utilities for the building. It's all of those components, but really, what we were trying to look at is what's the cost to run a building or to run the district as a whole, as opposed to an individual building, and what, as we go through these challenging economic times, what would be the best way to utilize our resources as we move forward to try and maintain our academic programs as we move forward, provide opportunities for students not only at the elementary level but K-12 throughout the whole district. And so really what it came down to was trying to find ways that we could be more efficient in the way that we operate our district as a whole. Just as you can tell at your own home with evenings like this, in terms of your own utility costs, if we were running 4 buildings instead of 5, we would have that much less in the way of utility costs. And so we tried to take conservative estimates and estimate what it would save us to close a building, and then we just really tried to look at what would make the most sense in terms of academic programming to go forward, and trying to find the best arrangement that would make that successful for our entire district as a whole. The other question that was asked was, and I'm not sure the exact particulars of it, but was asked about where's our balance sheet and what does our balance sheet look like as a whole. Most of you probably know we completed our audit back in October for the 2012-2013 school year, and our audited financial statements are on the website. And we have $2.2 million of unreserved fund balance. We were at a point where we had very little in the way of unreserved fund balance, and for those of you who don't know, unreserved fund balance is the amount of money that the state allows a district to carry as a percentage of the following year's budget to meet unexpected expenditures, things that just couldn't be planned for or weren't known at the start of a school year. And that's part of the overall financial stability or the fiscal responsibility that we try to have going forward. We try to maintain a reasonable amount of unreserved fund balance so that we can meet unanticipated expenditures as they may come up, but it also provides us with financial stability as we build our strategic plan and our long-range plan so that we have a good, sound base to work forward from. And that's what we did. The state allows us to have about $3 million in unreserved fund balance. We have $2.1 million or $2.2 million of unreserved fund balance, and we think that that's a healthy level for us to maintain going forward.
I just want to add to Matt's comment that you probably know, because you live in Niskuna and you follow your schools closely, that schools are probably among the most audited entities in the country, certainly in the state of New York. And as we had an external audit by the state of New York last year, one of the pieces of feedback, and really the only piece of feedback that they gave us, was that we needed to work on establishing a fund balance policy, and that we needed to work on having a healthier fund balance. And so we've achieved that, but we're still not at that level, that 4% level that the state allows. We're at a level that's 2.91%. And so, you know, the question comes up, you know, what about that $2.2 million fund balance? Can't that be used to close the gap? And the answer to that is it shouldn't be. You know, our recommendation is that it shouldn't be used to close the gap because it kicks the problem down the road. It doesn't solve the problem. And so I just wanted to add that piece. Question number 4 was, you know, where are the redistricting maps for not closing any building, but rather just redistricting, or for closing different buildings? And I want to take a couple of minutes to answer this question. And I also want to welcome Kevin LaRilliard, board member in Birchwood Parent. Thank you, Kevin, for being here tonight. And he's joined us up front. So first of all, I want you to know that and we call it the FUAC process, the Facilities Utilization Advisory Committee process. The FUAC committee did look, when we looked at this, the third model, the model of closing an elementary school, we did with school enrollments look at what it would look like if we closed any one of the 5 elementary schools. So I want you to know that that work was done, and that we did that work for the purpose of determining the number of students that would be impacted totally in the district if a particular school building were to be closed. Not just Birchwood, you know, not just Glencliff, not just Craig, but in fact any one of the 5 schools. So we did do that work. So I want you to know that that work was done and we did look at it. And then when it came to this process, to looking at the model of closing an elementary school, we made a conscious decision in looking at this that at least so far, and you know the direction of the board might be different. It might be to look at that. But we did not look at simply redistricting because it did not solve a number of the academic problems that we have. And Dr. Shea is going to talk about some of those concerns about what the benefits are of having 4 elementary schools in terms of academic program, in terms of the quality of depth and services that we can provide to students. But also, you know, kind of overshadowing all this are the financial concerns that we have as a district. Certainly, closing any school, whether it's an elementary school or a middle school, is not going to solve, you know, a $2.6 million budget deficit. No, there's no, and no one's ever said that it would, but it potentially could be one step towards helping to close that gap. But I would like to ask Deb if she would talk about the impact of being 3 deep and the impact of having 4 schools in our district.
I mentioned earlier about balancing resources K-12, and so there are advantages coming as a building principal myself. There are strong advantages to having schools that are 3 deep. And let me explain them. So if you think about our academic intervention services, our students that need extra help, or our students that have IEPs, when you have 3 sections, it's much more efficient to spread children. So if you could designate a classroom where the AIS kids were working, you could designate a classroom where our IEP students were working, you could designate a classroom where students who need speech. And instead of spreading all those students out over all 3 classrooms or over 2 classrooms, it allows you to have your providers work with just 1 teacher rather than 3. And so it concentrates it and allows for more time in that particular classroom, in that particular grade level. Additionally, when you have 3 sections, maybe you have experience personally where your child's in a classroom with a little bit of it, you know, another child has a little bit of an itch, right? And so if you're too deep, your child is going to be with that child, that other student, constantly through their elementary years. Instead of having 3 classrooms, and you could recombine students a little bit more frequently, and you can spread out, you know, kids that need extra help. You could spread out kids that are high ability learners. You have an opportunity to do that. Second to that is our district is one of the few districts, it's not the only district that in the capital region that has accelerated math at the elementary level. And I know that's a value that our board holds very dear to them. And we're proud of that. We've worked really hard to maintain that program and do good quality instruction. We've hired a consultant to help our math teachers. And so, unfortunately, because budget has been so tight, when you think about students in 5th grade, you have 2 sections. And so typically we might have 3 groups of students. We might have high ability kids, those kids that really need math acceleration. We'll have kids that are right on grade level and doing just what they need to do. And we might have students, and we typically do, who need extra help. Well, when you have 2 sections, how do you divide those kids? You need a 3rd teacher. And so for Birchwood, that 3rd teacher has been your academic intervention services teacher. And so that person, the 3rd person, is thrown into the cycle, into the schedule. And so for you, what that has done is that has diminished your ability to service students who are struggling, because now that person is being used to teach math every single day for 5th grade students, rather than teaching maybe kindergarten early intervention. So that's one of the powerful reasons why, as a former building principal, I know that sometimes as a building principal, I would have many counseling moments with parents, and they might have had an experience with a teacher from an older child, and they are not interested in replicating that same experience, or they just feel like a change would be in their best interest. It's really hard to do that when you're only 2 deep. There's just not that many ways to recombine students. And so there are really, from a building principal's perspective, there are really good reasons why having schools that are 3 deep are really beneficial. So let me change for just a moment and talk about the building principals. We've been meeting for the past couple of days, and so this isn't the reason why we're considering this option, but as a consequence of this option, it allows us to do some things. And so I started my comments earlier tonight by thinking about, balance of resources, repurposing resources, and how when resources are scarce, how important it is to be very strategic in how you use them. So say option 1 moves forward. As you might know that last year we reduced a librarian, and so we're happy to say tonight that we would not be reducing another librarian. We would be taking the librarian and making sure that every school had a full-time librarian. So that's a positive consequence that comes out of an option 1 decision. We would also look at reallocating all of our academic intervention services teachers, our special ed teachers, to make sure that we are providing exactly what kids need. So in 4 buildings, we don't have people traveling between buildings. We have a more efficient schedule, and I know you understand that. So we also have a long-term plan that we've been working really very hard with to, quite frankly, I'm just going to be honest. We're trying to provide instructional technology that other districts are already providing. And so I told you earlier, I get a little competitive when I hear those things and disappointed. So by repurposing some of the technology in this school, all the wonderful Promethean boards, doc cams, and the projection systems, and the computer lab, by repurposing all those, it allows us to have repair extra equipment right in place in case something breaks in one of the other buildings. That saves considerable resources that we would then use to deploy iPads at the elementary level for your students. So we have an ultimate plan for that, and we're looking at iPad carts now for the students in the intermediate grades. And so in speaking with our technology coordinator today, he said that that's absolutely possible, and that we would be repurposing of the lab to probably VA, who has a very old lab, and we'd be saving $50,000 on that. So there are some benefits to upgrading our instructional technology for our students. And then lastly, there's a couple other things here, but probably not for now, but lastly, by if option one was to move forward, we have, and you know, some of you may have come to some of our meetings in past years when we've talked about combination classrooms. And I'm almost afraid to bring up Common Core because I'll get everybody all charged up. But anyway, the good things about Common Core, the math and everything, right? It would be really difficult to deliver combination classrooms when we're so new at delivering a different math curriculum and more literacy. And so, what we have is, pardon me. So when we look at the combination of new classrooms, we know that we have eliminated the need, as far as we can see, for any combination classrooms. So that's a benefit because we don't have those, what we call bad breaks, where we have, you know, just enough, you know, just probably too many students for 2 sections and not enough for 3. And so those are potential problems for us, and we try to be very efficient with our resources when we used to use combination classrooms. So you think I think that's about it? Good.
All right, and then one of the other questions that we had was about transportation. And so when parents hear an increase of 10 minutes to a bus ride, they can't understand how that brings savings to transportation. They see it costing more. What we looked at when we were involved in the Facilities Utilization Advisory Committee, we looked at all the different options as Susan talked about, and what we were able to do, accomplish in looking at all those different scenarios was that a typical bus route probably runs between 30 to 50 minutes depending on the geographical area that it's in. And the average ride time for a student, the average ride time, is usually between 15 and 25 minutes. And in looking at these scenarios and redistricting and how it would change that, we actually found that we were able to have each attendance zone be consistent in that way, that the ride times would still be consistently between 30 and 50 minutes for a total bus ride. The average ride time would be between 15 and 25 minutes. We would be able to use the same number of buses because we're transporting the same number of students over that same time period across the entire district. So it actually allows us to add a couple of extra routes in the existing schools that would operate to help maintain a lower overall ride time or a consistent overall ride time for our students being transported to and from school each day. And so I thought that was an important thing, and that was an important thing to the Board of Education, that's one of the things they said, don't look to see that you can make the transportation necessarily more efficient in terms of using fewer buses. If we can maintain the same number of buses that we're using this year and it helps us shorten the ride time or maintain the same level of ride time, then that's what we'd like to do. And in our preliminary reviews of all that, that's what we found that we would be able to accomplish that.
Thanks, Matt. And then the last question that we were asked, I'm going to answer and try to fold in a couple of other questions that were raised today earlier in the conversation that we had with Dave and Deb and Deb and Deb and myself, 3 Debs in the room. And this question is, you know, when looking at the percent occupancy in 4 buildings, with 1 building at 100% and others at 95%, are we confident with this level of occupancy? And then there's a question goes on with apartments going in and off Belltown Road, and the potential exists to exceed. Does the potential exist to exceed our capacity? So a couple of things. In the Facilities Utilization Advisory Committee process, we had representatives from the 4 municipalities that are represented in our school district come and speak to the FUAC committee. And so we have accounted for, we have a knowledge of what's been approved and what is actually underway or in development. We have a number of things that they talked about that they said might be possibilities, but in fact haven't been yet approved or begun. So I want to answer the first question by saying, yes, we are confident at that level of occupancy. So when you think about the level of occupancy and our confidence, I want to point out there are 2 things that we're really looking at with that. One are the number of available full-size classrooms for instruction in the district. And you know, I think you know that in this option of closing any elementary school, whatever school it is, that there are 2 and potentially 3 available classrooms that remain, full-size classrooms that remain available if in fact we needed to add another section at any grade level for any reason. You know, in talking with Deb Shea about that, and you know, I've been here 3 years, she's been here 7 years, they were talking about the fact that over time, in the process of developing our staffing every school year, in March, we look at our enrollment, we make decisions about sectioning for budgetary development, and then we continue to monitor that enrollment right through the month of July to determine whether or not there's been any increase in enrollment that requires an additional section. It's been a rare occasion that we've had to add a section for any reason. We did split 2 sections last year, but we really did that because of the Common Core and because we chose in those 2 buildings where we did that to have a class at 1 grade level that went over the guidelines set by the Board of Education, to have another classroom at a different grade level in that building be somewhat smaller than we would normally see for class sizes. So we did make that decision last year, but it was not an enrollment driven decision. So typically from year to year, we can look back on what the trends have been in this unit. We have not had to add sections once we've looked at our enrollment in March and April and made those determinations. The other factor that we look at besides available full-size classrooms is the fact that when you look at the model, and you'll see this again on Tuesday night, we've shown this is posted on the website. We didn't know how easy it would be to show that tonight, or even if it was necessary, because it is posted. But we have demonstrated that in a 4 elementary school configuration, when you look at kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, that there isn't any school or any grade level that would be at capacity. And you know, we have these capacity conversations when it comes to classrooms. So we have class size guidelines. They were set 7 years ago, at least 7 years ago, by the Board of Education. They're ranges for upper limits. And when we talk about capacity, we're talking about class sizes that are at or below those numbers, not over them. And they're also not substantially lower than that either, because that wasn't a goal that we set out to accomplish in this economic time, although we probably would all love to have smaller class sizes. When you look at that information that's posted, or when you see that information again on Tuesday at the board meeting, what you're going to see is that in almost every classroom, at every grade level, in any of those 4 schools, that class sizes are smaller than they've currently been. And so the combination of, redistricting students, K-5 students across 4 elementary schools, evens out those class sizes and allows us to have smaller class sizes. In every one of those classrooms, there's still room for additional students if we had an influx of students. And you can see that information is there. You can look at that for any one of the 4 schools that is posted. And then I want to use this as an opportunity to answer the question that wasn't asked, because I think it's probably a question in the mind of every Birchwood parent and grandparent who's in the audience tonight. Why Birchwood? When the FUEP committee did its work and we looked at capacity and we looked at utilization, it's a fact that we have, between 70 and 75% of our space utilized at the elementary school level. When we looked at the individual schools, we looked at capacity of individual schools, and Glencliff and Birchwood are in fact physically our smallest schools. They have the smallest number of classrooms available for instruction. If we're concerned about capacity, and we want to not only meet our capacity needs now, but also any that we might plan for in the future or have in the future, we need to make sure that we maintain buildings that would allow for additional enrollment. And so we've done that. Really then the choices, the 2 smaller buildings are Glencliff and Birchwood. And if you think about physically where Glencliff is located, we're not sure that that could make sense for the district. So when we're answering that question, why it isn't that Birchwood was targeted, I'm aware of, from talking with Deb Burnt, talking with our board president, that over the last several days, and especially since the strategic planning meeting on Tuesday night when we used Birchwood as that example for closing a school, that there's some real emotion, of course there's emotion, but some real anxiety among a number of Birchwood parents about feeling like undervalued citizens or targeted. And I want to assure you that as we went through that FUEP process, there was no school that was identified at the elementary level for closing, but we in fact looked at all the schools, the sizes of the schools, the capacity of the schools, and the impact of redistricting in terms of having contiguous school zones where kids could push out to. And all of those factors, weighed into that. That wasn't a decision. It's not a decision now. The decision has not been made. That would be a board action if that was a decision. So that decision has not yet been made. But in terms of what school we use to do the work that we were asked to do by the Board of Education, in terms of providing information, we needed to identify a school that we would use as an example, and Birchwood was in fact that school for the reasons that I just listed. So for Dave and Deb, we've worked our way through the list. Okay. I'm sure there may be other things that people want to, you mentioned the comment period. I want to say again as a superintendent of schools, and I want you to know this, that we know that there's been some conversation about why are schools sending out information about making room for Birchwood kids. I'm not aware of any communications that look like that. I do know that there was one communication that one building principal put out to her building following the Tuesday night session where she clarified the information that was in fact shared and used at strategic planning because she heard some misinformation that was being shared in her building that morning. Certainly with no intent, and if you go back and you read that document, she made that clear, with no intent to send a message that any decision has been made. So I just hope that we can, if you looked at that document, you might revisit it. I'm not sure why people even have it at this point. It was really meant as a clarification for our staff in that building. But I want you to know that I put out a message to Leadership Council a couple of nights ago saying, there's a lot of chatter in our district. There's a lot of concern being expressed. We're going to have that. That's going to happen anytime we look at closing any school in any one of these models. And what I want to say to you and what I said to our leadership team is that our families and our students in this unit are all our own. And what we're trying to do is to work through a process where we make the best decisions that we can make for the long term, or at least for the immediate term that we can predict and we can project, and do whatever we can do to provide the best quality program for our kids moving forward. So, Dave, I want to thank you for inviting us here tonight, and I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. And we really do appreciate you coming out tonight on Friday night, presenting the information. We'll continue to keep the dialogue open as PTO folks with our community as well as with the district. At this point, we will open it up. Remind you to try to keep comments to within 3 minutes. I don't want to have to borrow this young man's cane. But it's look, I'm a parent too. It's an emotionally charged issue. I've been attached to this school. I'm also the PTO co-president. Sometimes it's hard to delineate that. So I'm going to let my community do the talking because I know there's a lot of folks out there that have questions and comments. And, so we're gonna turn it over, and we'll just try to keep it moving so we can get everybody out of here. But everybody has the ability to come up and speak. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to put the microphone here in the center. If you would like to speak, if we can sort of start a line and come down the center here, and the microphone will be here. We'll start that way, and that will be appreciated. So, all right, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. My name is Kevin McKenna. My name is Kevin McKenna. You probably all know my family. My wife is very active in Birchwood. My 2 children go to school here. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here to listen to what we have to say. It does genuinely seem to me that there is a strategic plan for providing an academic structure to the students. I would kind of call into question, for me personally, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not an academic in the fact that I'm a teacher or an administrator. I'm more of a numbers guy. I do kind of question though, I've heard a lot about planning from an academic perspective. I haven't really heard much in the way of planning from a budgetary perspective. While I appreciate the fact that you guys have an agenda, a year-over-year agenda, I think that it would be very beneficial to see a year-over-year strategic plan financially that'll pull everybody out of this $2.5 million deficit that we talk about. I, in fact, was one of the people that was involved in generating the questions that you guys had answered for us, so I thank you for that. Again, though, I think I would like to say, I'd be very curious to know what the specific operational expenses are. And if the FUEC committee did do their due diligence, I would think that those would be numbers that would be very easy to come up with and be very presentable. As a Birchwood father or parent, I certainly am not opposed to what's the best for my children. I can say, though, I am very opposed to the position that's being taken prior to any kind of a budget coming out. And without having a budget in place, how can we actually plan financially as to what's going to happen year over year, or in 6 months for that matter? And having said that, I guess I would say, beyond that, I find it very arbitrary to just decide to close one school without any kind of accurate financial planning. Maybe there has been financial planning, maybe it's as accurate as you can make it. I'm sure that there's a delta as to what you anticipate you're going to spend versus what you actually spend. It's curious. I'd be curious to know if that $2.5 million is actually the case. I'd be curious to know if there was any kind of a study, even around the transportation aspect of everything, where you talked about how you could maintain the same level of buses, you could maintain the bus routes. Have we discussed or thought about the costs associated with the additional insurance that needs to be paid, with the wear and tear on vehicles, with the extra expense for staffing, with liability of the possibility of having a child left behind and the bus has to travel back 30 to 40 minutes to pick the child up? All of those questions, I think they're very important questions that I think need to be answered before any kind of decision is made to change or redistrict or close a school for that matter. And I also haven't really heard a concrete number as to the level of savings for closing one school. If it is $440,000, that to me seems like it actually really represents a very small percentage of what the overall budget is. And I'm sure on Tuesday night you guys will be able to tell us specifically what that budget is, because I, again, don't see how you can financially plan or academically plan without some sort of a budget. So again, I'd like to just really convey that my concern isn't so much over an action that's taken now. My concern is, if the action is taken, what's the ripple effect down the road when you guys come back to us and say, oh my God, we're way over budget again, it looks like we got to close another school, looks like we got to take a drastic measure. If I recall correctly, the action just prior to this one was subcontracting out all the bus drivers, and we were told that that was going to be a good fix, a really good step in the right direction, and that was it. So my good friend Dave has asked me to wrap it up, and I've been accused of being verbose, so I'm going to pass the baton, so to speak. Thank you again, everybody, and I look forward to hearing some more concrete financial answers on Tuesday night.
Hi, my name is Chris. I live right up here in the Birchwood neighborhood. I apologize if I jump around a little bit. I've got about a million things on my mind, and I haven't prepared anything formally to say. And again, this, as you mentioned, is a fairly emotional issue, as well as being a rational, logical issue as well. My wife and I bought our house in this neighborhood specifically because of this school. This school is consistently ranked 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 for performance. We wanted to be able to walk our kids to school, and have bought a house here and lived here for 6 years, and have our kids now no longer able to go to school before they even get here is fairly frustrating to us. But that aside, my own personal issues aside, I see this, if I had to kind of break down what we're looking at here, I see 3 areas in particular that are being addressed. And I take issue to all 3 of those areas. The first issue is performance for our school district, quality of education. The second issue is money, obviously, having enough money to do everything we need to do. And the third issue is the process by which we came to these decisions. Now, on the first aspect, the quality of education, obviously we all want the best quality of education for our kids. There's nobody debates that. But a lot of discussion has gone into this idea that
that having 3 sections deep in all of our classes or all of our grades is this big benefit to our kids. And quite frankly, what we're talking about here is student tracking. We're talking about, or the nicer way of putting it is ability grouping. And the reality is that the scientific research community is pretty well in consensus that this is not a good thing for your kids. You know, grouping your kids by ability does more harm than good. It may be more convenient for the teachers, it may be easier for the school district, but in general, there is a scientific consensus that this is not good for your kids. You end up with an imbalance of mobility because it's a lot easier to move down into a lower track than it is to move up into a better track. And a lot of the studies in the past have focused on the academic performance of kids who are tracked. And they find that there are marginal benefits to the top performers, but there are detrimental effects to the bottom performers. And nowadays, there are more and more studies that are coming out now that are looking at the social aspects of it, which hadn't really been looked at as much in the past. And what they're finding is that no matter how quietly you move kids around, all the kids know who's in what group. And this, you know, it's a very damaging thing for a kid to be moved from a higher group to a lower group. And it's much better for the kids to be mixed in with all the other groups as part of the general population. Yes, it's more difficult for the teachers to give them special attention. It's more difficult logistically to do it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's better for our kids to do that. Now, if we decide as a school district that that's something we want to do, then so be it. But we shouldn't be making the decision to consolidate schools with that as one of the main goals of doing the consolidation, without having an agreed upon school doctrine that we as a community believe in grouping by ability. We shouldn't just do it on conversational discussions about ability grouping. I don't buy it. Let's have a consensus that that's the right way to do it, and then we can do that. And that brings me to another issue with our process here. Yeah.
Would you like to respond to that before you move to
Yes.
the next one?
Yes, I feel like I need to respond.
I figured you would.
I urgently need to respond.
Microphone.
And so I so appreciate your perspective. So I obviously in my position I have read all the research like you have. And so when I read it, I see different things. And so that's the problem when you look at research is sometimes it's done in urban districts, sometimes it's done in suburban districts, sometimes it's done wherever. And so, it's assuming certain things. It's assuming certain conditions. And so the conditions here in Niskayuna are far different than the kinds of research that pose detrimental effects. So when we talk about math, so we don't ability group in math except for when we do certain topics in math in 5th grade and 4th grade. And there's a strong community position that you want to retain accelerated math for our 4th and 5th graders because, and I know we've talked about this many times, should we just, not do it anymore? And so the pushback from that has been extraordinary. So our parents are asking for us to maintain that program because it sets students up to be on a pathway. Some of our kids are taking Calc 3 at the high school, and it's college level math. So to say that, that you would have to discard all of that if we were to change course and think about delivering math a little bit differently. So what I know about the research on math grouping is a little bit different, and that is in particularly in the area of math, students do benefit by having instruction right pinpointed to where their needs are. That's not to say that everything is delivered we modify everything for the kids that might need a little, are struggling in math. We give the grade level curriculum to the kids in the middle. We don't do that. What it is, it's the same curriculum. What we do for the kids that are struggling, we give them more time. And so for the kids at the top, we might give them more enrichment. We might extend them.
So we don't, our intent in this unit is never to do very homogeneous grouping or to, group things, group kids and language arts. Our goal is always to follow the researcher. His name is Vygotsky, and if you want to take, it's V-Y, I can spell it for you, send it out, Vygotsky. His research has been the foundation of learning theory in schools everywhere. And basically, it is you deliver instruction in the zone of proximal development. And by that, it's you deliver your instruction exactly where that student is, just a little bit higher so they reach just a little bit. That's the zone of proximal development. And that philosophy in this district is so strong, and our teachers are so good at it. They know just when your child needs a little bit more, or a little bit more help, or a little bit more challenge. And so to hear that we're going to be grouping kids and the groups are static, I can actually share with you when we did, we experimented with how we deliver math a couple years ago, and actually Birchwood was one of the schools that did a very interesting model. And we actually measured the number of kids who, between like 3 levels of math, the kids that move from one level to another, back and forth, because we changed it depending on what the content was, what the concept was. And so for some kids, time was like really quick. So you know what? They got extra enrichment. For some kids, doing division was a little bit harder, so we gave them more time. And so we moved kids back and forth depending on the chapter in the unit and how they did on the pretest. So I don't want anyone to leave here tonight, and I so appreciate your perspective, because in many schools in the country that is a huge concern, and you are absolutely correct. But I need to reassure folks here that in this unit we are thoughtful and very deliberate about what we do in terms of instruction and our students, and to do what you said would be absolutely unacceptable to us. So I apologize for interrupting, as you're on point number 2, and well, so thank you. Like to finish point number 1. Oh, okay. So, and we don't want to have this take the whole day, but maybe we could.
I think what you're saying is a good segue, including my points, which is simply, I understand. So it's simply that, regardless of what you feel about student tracking or ability grouping or whatever it is we do in the school district, my concern is that we are making a decision based on something that is not necessarily part of a strategic plan. So you may be very, very right on point as far as your assessment of how Niskayuna does it versus other school districts, and whether it's good for our kids or not good for our kids. My issue with the whole thing is that it's been brought to us as this great benefit that we've got 3 sections deep in every school, and we still don't have this long-term strategic plan for the district. And you can't make grandiose decisions like closing the school without the larger strategic plan that says, to some degree, what your strategy for educating the kids is. You can't come to us and say, we've got to go 3 sections deep, but I don't have a plan to show you why we need to do that. And that's one of my biggest issues with it. Very briefly. Have you guys? Have you
killing me on the 3 minutes.
like said? But I did get a lot of my time taken.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to tell
Have you guys considered what Cuomo said 2 days ago about providing pre-K education for all of our kids? This is a new thing that in the last 2 days has popped up, and is going to, if it goes through, which it sounds like it's got a lot of support, is going to require every school district to have an additional grade. So we're not talking about just a section of kids or a couple kids coming in. It's an entire grade of kids at the pre-K level. Now, we certainly, with that information being out there in the next few days, I certainly can't imagine that you would decide to close the school without having evaluated it at least. I mean, if you take it into consideration and you still do it, fine, but evaluate it. So that's got a million other things to say, but I'll cede my time.
I'm not going to talk about grouping. I don't know anything about it. My name is Sasha Mirkovic. I'm one of the Birchwood parents. We have 1 graduated, 2 more to go, and God willing, we'll graduate all 2 of them from here. don't know a lot about grouping, but I know a lot about money. I'm a CFP. I do this for a living. And I was before you last year when we look at the budget, and closing an elementary school was saving about $444,000 and something. Closing a VA was $998,000. Now, you don't have to be a CFP to know that $990,000, whatever, is better than $400,000. So I figured you guys took that into account as you're looking at stuff. So for me, that was my first logical question when I got this, like, whoa, what happened last year? Now I hear we don't have a budget, so I'm like even more confused. There are two things I don't want to add to the confusion. I want to make one point and want to make one question or suggestion. We're all human, and that means we want what we want. We want it now. People in this room probably want to have this school open. You want what you want, and we're going to figure it out. How is that going to work out? We judge others by their actions as humans, and we judge ourselves by our intent. So whether intent was one thing or another, we need to be aware of actions and what we do and what those actions communicate. Inspire confidence is one of the most important things to me. The actions in the last couple of days did not inspire any confidence here. That's why we're all here on Friday night. So that's just a comment. Suggestion might be this. I understand how budgets work. And unfortunately, you're not federal government, and you have to have a balanced budget. Otherwise, Yellen would print the money, and everything would be fine. Now, every budget has two sides, as you know. There's the income and there's the expense side. So I understand that closing an elementary school might be best from academical standpoint, and I've talked to some parents that actually tried to explain to me how keeping VA is more beneficial. I still don't get it, but it doesn't matter. I'm a little thick there. But has anybody looked at this? We have Craig, Hillside, and Rosendale within how many miles radius? And now we are in the woods. If I'm looking at the budget, I'm saying, okay, I understand grouping, whatever. I'm not going to go there. But like, I understand all that stuff. How much money can I get for leasing the building that I'm going to close? And I don't know. I think you're going to get a lot more money leasing a building right there in the heart of Niskayuna than here in the woods. And you know, I'm a big fan of iPads and Apple and all the other stuff. I would love my kids to have iPad, but let's not close the school because of iPads.
My name is Susan Behar. I'm a parent at Birchwood. I have 4 children, to which finished Birchwood. I've been here for 9 years. We've lived here for 11. So I have a little bit of experience here. We still have 2 to go, so I'm also hoping that they will complete Birchwood. I listened very carefully to your answers to the questions that were presented to you. And I was curious about the numbers, because you were asked specifically to give us numbers. Numbers to show not just the cost savings of closing Birchwood, the cost savings of other schools, but in addition, what it costs to run a building. This is history repeating itself. You know, there is good documentation on the Niskayuna website. In 1979, Birchwood was reopened. So was VA. The VA had been closed. What Sasha said was very important because VA had been leased when it was closed. It was actually almost demolished when it was closed, for those of you who aren't familiar with the history. It was leased out to Brown School. It was leased out to the Schenectady County Public Library. They made good use of the school while it's closed. Again, I think Sasha has a good point. I don't know what you would do with a little school in the woods on a side street off of Route 7. Maybe you could come up with something to use the school for, but I don't know about revenue. You know, what I'd like to say, as all parents really started out by saying, is, you know, we have a lot of pride in our school. We love our school. Our kids love the school. We have become a tight-knit group of parents here because we are on the far end of Niskayuna. It's hard for us to imagine pushing into 3 schools that are all within a stone's throw of each other while we're all out here on the far end, on the Colony border, the Latham border. Okay, it means a long bus ride. When you talk about bus rides, you mentioned 30 to 50 minutes. So that's one way, and I know that's the maximum length of time you're looking at, but that's an hour and 40 minutes for a potential kindergartner, or in the future maybe a pre-K student to sit on a bus. That's a lot of time. I mean, I'm complaining about a 30-minute ride to Albany. How does that kid feel about sitting on a bus for 50 minutes? Birchwood puts out an excellent education for the students. Niskayuna, there's no doubt, Niskayuna is the #1 school district in the Albany area. We've got the business review to show it, right? 2013, Niskayuna was rated #1 school district. We know Niskayuna is a good district. We know at the high school level, they're preparing kids for college. But if you're looking at schools, it should not just be about the number of kids that go there, it should be about academic performance, I think. A number of other variables to weight one school against another if you're going to close an elementary school. If Niskayuna's test scores across the board are all equal, well then the elementary schools, if they're equal, then it's a pot shot as to which one you choose, I guess. But Birchwood consistently is performing one of the highest elementary schools. The kids that come out of here do very well on their exams. The MAP shows that as well. I think to keep up that standard, pushing into other schools, potentially overcrowding them. I know you say we have extra classrooms, but honestly, I don't see it. I have 2 kids at the middle school. Last year, they showed up at 6th grade with not enough chairs to sit down. So a school that's supposed to be built for over 700 kids with a maximum capacity now, or not maximum, but an attendance of 500 kids, why weren't there enough chairs? They had to stand on the first day of school. What do you do when the population increases? We have a couple of things coming up. The pre-K that we're developing as mandatory universal pre-K, as Sasha said. What do you do when there's another class? What do you do when more businesses come to the area, which they will? Governor has proposed a Startup New York plan where more businesses are going to want to come to upstate New York, no state income tax. Sounds great. We have a lot of big companies. If I were going to pick a school in an area I knew nothing about, I would look it up and see what the #1 school district is. For 2013, we were it. Where do you put those kids? And the last thing is just the MAP. I think the MAP was great. It was a nice indicator of how we're teaching kids. I think, although it wasn't used really for anything that I could see. I have 2 kids who scored 99th percentile, and the classes weren't adjusted. No difference was made based on the results of the MAP. You're going to start maybe a Common Core curriculum. This is to follow on the heels of Singapore math, moving kids into another school, and then developing Common Core on top of it by 2017. Those are a lot of changes, and I don't think we have enough data on all of this stuff to see that what we're doing is the right move for the kids in terms of education. I think we're not waiting for the results of all this stuff before we actually make more changes. Hi.
my name is Terry Dutcher. I wrote letters to probably everyone up there last year. My husband and I probably attended every school board meeting between the two of us. I want to point out that it was at the Birchwood end of Niskayuna that the Vote Yes Niskayuna Coalition was formed last year, which I feel was quite responsible for the passing of the budget. The PTO from Birchwood, I don't want to get emotional. For the smallest school in the district out on the building out on the edge, that is arguably farther from anything than Glencliff, though a bridge doesn't separate us. I don't really understand why we're the ones on the chopping block all the time when we are so far from things. I know other people have said things more eloquently, and you will be receiving letters from me again next week. I'm in the middle of midterms at my school. But my husband and I teach in a neighboring district. We made a conscious decision to buy our house in Niskayuna. We have a child in the high school in AP classes of close to 30. We have 2 children here at Birchwood. I have 3 key points. I will try not to be wordy. If, as was mentioned ad nauseum by people in the community at budget meetings last year, we have money issues, and if last year to close VA would earn us $960,000 and then $800,000 close to budget time, but now the number is down to $568,000. I'm wondering how it's not as much money any longer, yet it's remained a pretty steady $415,000 to close an elementary school. That's a financial. If it's a curricular question, and I know that they are intertwined, in 2003, though I realize it's long ago, I don't think our esteemed board members have changed all that much, neighborhood schools and equity across the district is one of the mission statements that is still there. In 2006, during the bond issue to expand elementary schools to make workable, larger spaces, which may be why now Birchwood does not have as many classrooms, but kids are no longer being taught in hallways and closets. The point was to expand, and again, neighborhood school was a clear selling point for passing that bond issue. From 2010 to 2012, a middle school visioning committee was put into place. There was a year-long comprehensive study, and then a school committee was convened, and they presented 3 different proposals in December of 2012. Yet those no longer exist. I'm an educator. I had taught in middle schools for 8 years. I don't remember, or I don't know the up-to-date curriculum as to why a 5-6 building and then a 7-8 building is a thing now, because that was not one of the 3 plans agreed upon by the middle school visioning committee. The FUAC has now become the committee whose work we are basing everything upon, and there are many esteemed members on that committee in this audience. I'm married to one of them. I don't think when they went into that committee that they thought that what their task was is to come up with a plan to close schools. I think there were subdivisions of the groups looking at the initial task that they had. I don't think that the interpretation of many of them is the direction this is headed. Money is an issue, but I don't feel, from what I have read or heard personally from a number of people, that they feel they reached consensus, but I don't think it was a universal consensus as those things tend to go. 2 other points very quickly, and I won't expand because I know Stephanie is behind me. We're colleagues at Colony. Last year in the budget process, there were a number of plans and scenarios put out. This is what would happen if we did this. This with the cost saving. This is the other one. And I practically have those memorized. I'm not sure really why January 28th is the date that this decision has to be made if there are still so many questions and if the financials don't exist. So I'm not really sure why that scenario isn't there, because we had those steps last year, both for the first budget and then for the second budget vote that was passed with the help of probably most everyone sitting in this room right now. And the final thing is also a question. Cuomo put out his budget. We have not gotten a legislative response, which sometimes we do get money back from that. So again, I question why this decision is made January 28th when the state budget is still going on.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Stiles. I am also the mother of 3 children here at Birchwood. Ms. Shea, I would like to thank you for trying to make us comfortable with why 3D is a better thing for our kids, but unfortunately, I think some of the reasons are silly. The fact that your child may not... The fact that your child may not get along with a friend in the class, well, that's a life skill, and if we're trying to avoid that, that's a problem. The second thing is 2 sections versus 3 sections. Birchwood has had 2 sections of students of each grade level for a number of years, from what I understand, and the results, according to the New York State report card, have been no different than the schools that are 3 deep, like Craig and some of the other larger schools. So. Those are my issues as a parent, and although I feel grateful for you to try and make us feel comfortable about that, I think that, again, the reasons are not founded. But as a taxpayer, I'll turn my head, as a taxpayer, if a building closure is possible, given current numbers and future projections, I support it, actually. You probably remember receiving letters from me and me speaking at board meetings telling you needed to close the school to pass your budget. And I actually predicted your budget will fail if you do not close the school to save that money and ask taxpayers to go above the cap. Unfortunately, I was correct. I'll just speak briefly about the bonds. I didn't live in the district when the vote took place to expand these elementary schools and put money into these elementary schools, but I know it was upward near $92 million. And my concern is closing an elementary school over the middle school is VA needs a lot of work, and that was admitted by the Board of Education. And that work cannot be done without another bond vote. So not only would you not close the school that saves the most money, but then eventually you are going to have to turn around and ask the taxpayers for more money to fix up the school that you didn't close in the first place. And I'll turn my head kind of in the middle for this one. I know a lot of people have been asking me about the administrative structure at my school district compared to the administrative structure at Niskayuna. And although it has nothing to do with school closings, the only way to save money is to close a building or people. That's all that saves money. It's not the notebooks, it's people. And our ratio of administrators to children in the district is ridiculous. The reason we were given was APPR mandates, and that is simply not true. And if you're not in education, you don't know that that's not true. Any district using the Danielson model, which I have recently found out that you use, is an evidence-based observation model. Actually, the point of it is that it should be inter-rater reliability, meaning anyone should be able to go into those classrooms and rate these teachers with observations. Anyone, not a content specialist. And I'm not going to get into the domains, but there's one component of one domain that looks at the content when these teachers are being evaluated. And that's provided by the teacher through artifacts. There needs not be a content specialist to have APPR mandates and observations met. So I would assume that you would look at that as a cost savings, because administrative restructuring certainly will not affect a community like a school closure would, and I can guarantee to everyone in this audience that administrative restructuring would not affect programs or students in the least.
Hi, my name is Debbie Toy. I'm proud to be a Birchwood parent as well as a Niskayuna School District parent. I have 2 children that are in the high school that have come through Birchwood, as well as a child who is still at Birchwood. I also had the privilege, although some days it didn't feel like a privilege, to be part of the FUAC committee. And I have had 6 months to really process all the information that many of you are just taking in. One of the questions that was put to our cabinet members tonight was about redistricting, and I think there's a lot of concern or misconception about what would happen if we close a school, and I don't feel that that was addressed. People asked about redistricting maps. Would it be that only Birchwood families would experience change and we would be the only ones moving around? Or would, like, if Glencliff is underutilized, some Craig students would have to move to Glencliff to make room for other things? So would it be that there would be change across our district, which is one of the things that the FUAC committee spoke about? Or would it be that Birchwood students, what I've heard from a lot of parents is, are Birchwood students going to push into other elementary schools, which bring up a lot of fears about transportation. Do we need to go over to Craig? Are some of our students going to have to go over to Glencliff? How is this redistricting going to work? And if we could get some answers about that, if it is chosen that we need to close a school for a variety of reasons, I think that would also help to alleviate some of the fears and tension. Thank you.
If I could, I would like to address that in that what would happen if we were to decide to close Birchwood Elementary? Birchwood would, students would push into either Rosendale or Hillside. And as a result of that, there would be students from both of those schools that would move on to either Craig Elementary, and then Craig Elementary would push some of their students into Glencliff. So it would be a domino effect. That's the only way that we would be able to keep contiguous boundaries and contiguous attendance zones, and that's how we would balance out the enrollments between the 4 schools that would remain open. Okay?
Thank you. My name is Paul Stanko. My wife and I, we have 3 children. We have a kindergartner here, and we have 2 twin boys at home. I teach first grade in Bethlehem Central School District, and when we were buying a house, my wife and I, we had definitely different, must-haves. She really wanted granite countertops, and I wanted a really good school district and a really good elementary school. I'm serious. She really wanted I spent a lot of time researching Niskayuna. I grew up in the area. I went to Gilderland. I checked out Birchwood. Everything I saw, everything I heard was just amazing. I've worked at Hamburger Elementary School for 10 years now, and I've seen the positive effects of a small community school and a neighborhood school, and kids coming to school, walking to school every day. Little things like it bringing joy to elderly citizens, and the relationship that I have as a teacher with the parents, and relationships you have with the PTO, and I see the positive effects of that every day, and that's why I picked the school, and it's just as long. Thank you. Sorry, one more quick thing. I won't mention anything about granite countertops. I don't think I was 3 minutes. I've had some experience with groupings, 2 deep, 3 deep, 4 deep, and even 5 deep. And in my experience, I haven't noticed much of a difference between any of them. The one thing I will say now that I get a grade every year as a teacher, that, and I may have misunderstood you when you said this, that if we're going to group, by ability and have a classroom with all the speech kids and a classroom with all the AIS kids and a classroom with all the, I misunderstood, with all the IEP kids, no teacher is really going to want to have that. Because, thank you. No, well, I was great. I'm serious. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colleen Casella. I have 2 elementary students at Birchwood, as well as a 2.5-year-old at home. The Strategic Planning Committee in many other schools is comprised of community members, parents, teachers, administrators, board members. And it's not looking like that was the case. What it looked like with your strategic plan was the case of board members and superintendents. I'm sorry, involved in that, as well as educators, teachers, admin, and I didn't see that. Other things about, you're talking about the 2D, and then an AIS teacher is also teaching accelerated classes. I'm sorry, but I've seen some of the best AIS teachers teach accelerated above and beyond the people that are groomed for it. So that talking about your 2D, that is just a load of garbage for me. I'm sorry. I understand as a district also how you can justify having 4 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. It just seems like an overabundance of middle schools. You should have a balance there also. And it has already been said that you can't equally separate two of the elementary schools to one school and 2 to the other. So to me, that's what are you going to do to one school? Have it like they're going to be separated once again. When you were talking about classroom size and how, because I was there on Tuesday night, obviously. And I also, along with a few other people, have started the initiative on Facebook. You said that there would be 3 deep in each school, and that's great. But I also was looking at the school report cards, and I was looking at how our test grades were. We had between 23 and 22 students on average in almost every single school. What I was hearing was a lot of 4th and 5th grade classrooms now be 28 students. So you're filling them at max capacity, which if you are an educator, which I am, higher classroom size tends to bring in lower test grades. That's the admin. You have coordinators, and then you have people that are under the coordinators, and then you have secretaries. Many other school districts have decreased that significantly. They have departments under administration. $415,000, which you said on Tuesday night, is not enough of a cut to cut an elementary school. You talked about how you wanted to have iPad cards. That's lovely. Look at what other districts have done and get grants. Hire a grant writer. Do we have grants in this, Fiona? Are you using that? You save millions that way. You're talking about a 50-minute, between a 20-minute and a 50-minute commute for students. Our students are the farthest away. That would be 50 minutes for our students. Are the people in Colony going to be bused to Hillside? That is one heck of a commute. And then they'll be transferred to Van Antwerp? That's ridiculous. That is the farthest distance for these parents. We have parents living off near Bly Road. Have you considered what a kindergartner on a bus for 50 minutes is like? They have to go to the bathroom. There's going to be accidents. About the 3D, but I'm sorry. I feel that if you group your best students and then you group your IEP students and your AIS students one thing, you are creating an elitist school. I'm sorry. Students need a balance with one another. Students need to achieve higher, I understand. Those AIS students need to achieve higher, but those other students also gain a perspective. There's children that are high that gain perspectives to help and assist others. I'm sorry, I have one other thing to say. You say our schools are at 70-75% capacity. I have an idea. We save $800,000 for VA, move admin to the elementary schools, and we occupy that space and then sell VA. We get a profit. Thank you.
My name is Shireen Tate, and my family, my 3 children, I've been at Birchwood for 12 years now. I have one in the high school, I have one in the middle school, and I have one who's graduating this year from 6th grade. So I'm leaving Birchwood. But I mean, I hear everything that's being said, and I understand that there's been all these strategic sessions and things have been discussed. But I wonder, you know, again, this is going to go to the administration question. We are administration heavy, okay? I mean, we've been seeing to our wonderful superintendent. We are the highest paid superintendent in the area. The administrative salaries in the district office alone are over $1 million. Why is this when we're considering closing a school? And why are we not like looking at outsourcing some of our services? You know, why not some of these back office functions? Why can't we hire out for that and it would cost less to this district? I mean, my questions really have to do with we're considering closing schools and things that have been considered for years. Why aren't we considering new options? Private businesses are doing these things. I mean, why isn't this district looking at cutting some of the top administrators, the non, you know, what is it? Just the non-essential staff. Why are we not looking at some of those options? I know these are your salaries, and I'm sorry, I'm sure you're very good at what you do. But when we are talking about closing schools and it's $400,000 saving on a $2.7 million deficit, why are we not looking at some of those other avenues? And the school board, thank you members for being here. We voted you in, and we really do hope that you're going to fight for some of these other things. There are other options that we haven't even considered. That you take a look at some of those things. I mean, how can you take that paycheck home and think, you know, it's okay, that it's all right for our kids? You know, I mean, I'm leaving Birchwood, but for those people who have kindergartners, who little kids who aren't even in school, we have a new development on console. I don't know if people, when they're looking at the numbers for Birchwood, we have people in strollers, they're babies. I mean, is that a part of the census for Birchwood School? I don't know if it is, because there's about 75 new homes coming in over there. I mean, they're in now. You know, you got to think of those numbers too. All right?
Good evening. My name is Sean Tomko. I have 2 kids at Birchwood School. I just have some follow-up questions. Number 1, I'm not an educator. And number 2, I'm not very good with math unless it's divisible by 3. So I'll start with that premise. If I understand the response from the school tonight is that redistricting involves redistricting not only of Birchwood kids, but of kids that are currently attending Rosendale and Craig and possibly Hillside. And my only question is that there's been an awful lot reported. We are all well aware in this room that Birchwood School may close. But are those parents whose kids attend those schools aware that they may not be attending Rosendale or Craig or Hillside next year when they get transferred? And I don't think the board has told them that they are subject to the redistricting too. Yeah. Because if the school district is all in it together, then that's fair. Then let's redistrict as a whole. But let's not single out the Birchwood kids because of certain areas of the population of Niskayuna are clinging to their schools. Number 2, the comment on tracking. I don't know the answer to that. The gentleman that spoke earlier talked about studies that showed that tracking doesn't work and it's not effective. And Ms. Shea, I apologize. I don't know as much as you. But your response was, I know those studies. Those studies say that, but don't worry about those studies. Trust me, we're right. Well, you're not the study. If the studies show that tracking is not effective, then why is the school district so heck bent on doing it? When I moved to this district, I'm not originally from Niskayuna School District. We moved here and we were told that, you know, Niskayuna is a great district if you have kids at the bottom level, if your kids need services, or if at the top level. But that the 80% of the kids in between can sometimes be left behind. Now, this school, Birchwood School, does not leave those kids behind. By keeping the kids together, they are exposed to the kids that are smarter than them and also the kids that need more help than them. And to me, that is a value that should be embraced by this district. It should not be discouraged. And the only final thing I have to say is, if closing BA saves $560,000, almost $600,000 a year, and closing Birchwood saves $400,000 a year, over 10 years, that's $2 million. A bond to go toward the future. That's $2 million in savings that could be put toward education. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vijay Rangaraju. I'm an IT manager from Deloitte. I have 2 kids. My oldest one is in the 2nd grade. And just this morning we've registered our younger one for kindergarten in Birchwood. So I'm hoping that he graduates from Birchwood. I know there's a lot of emotion, and I'm a little emotional myself, but I'm hoping to keep the emotion aside. I'm originally from India. I wanted to say this. I did my schooling in India. I came here for my master's. In India, when we close a school, which is run by state, we don't go through so much debate. So first of all, I just want to appreciate. I think we all should be proud of this. The process that we go through. I think we all should be proud of this. Secondly, I just want to, there's a lot being said. I don't want to go into the technical details. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't agree with the 3-step. I know you gave some logic about zonal proximity. I've read a lot of research on that. But let's keep aside the intelligence aside, the intellectual and all that part. But from basic common man standpoint, if you already have something working, which works from a performance standpoint, I think you go with it. It's as simple as. There's a lot about transportation, the budget numbers, and so many things I've said. I think one of the common themes, which I think again I didn't come prepared, so I just want to say this, is I think when you look from the cost-benefit analysis, and I implement this at my work every day. I think we really need to be convinced. I think there's a lot of clarity that needs to be provided, a lot of details that need to be provided in terms of why we are not closing VA and Birchwood. I think that has to be thought through. And I just use something that you said. And in fact, one of the gentlemen spoke earlier, and he spoke about one of the options. You said, well, we are thinking long term. Let's not kick the problem just down the road. We're not really solving the problem. I think we are exactly. I think exactly the same thing applies for what you're doing right now. So Birchwood, we are not solving the problem. We're just kicking the problem down the road. And I just want to add this because of all the reasons that have been talked about. I also want to say this. I think one of the ladies made a very good suggestion in terms of when you talk about strategic planning, right? In fact, when we do this at work, we involve stakeholders. And for us, stakeholders are the users that use the system. And for you, the stakeholders are us. So why don't you involve us? And I'm sure there's a lot of brain power here itself. There are a lot of intellectuals. You have somebody who's very good at numbers, right? Why can't we be part of this strategic planning? And we have an incentive to be creative. So I think when we have so much incentive and so much personal to us, I think maybe we can. Again, please don't take this wrong. I'm not judging the your intelligence, but I think we have incentive. I think we can definitely be part of the strategic planning and maybe come up with a solution for this, which helps us keep this school. And lastly, I want to say this. Being an IT manager myself, I've come across situations. I've managed projects where I had to let go of resources, fire, right? And first thing that comes to my mind is, if I cut down the resource, I'll save money, right? We do some high-level cost-benefit analysis. But guess what? When we do that, we have risks down the road. So sometimes we don't think through those risks from short term. And when we say long term, every 2 years adds up to the long term. So you have to think about next 2 years, next 2 years, next 2 years after that as well. And So what happened was when we did that once, and it came back and bite us because we got more work and we did not have the resources. We had to hire the resources back again, which added more costs, and our performance took a bad hit. And when performance took a bad hit, our credibility was lost at the client, and we had to spend a lot more money to bring in more resources and gain that credibility back. So, long story short, I think it's very basic. It doesn't take Einstein's mind to say this, but when you have such a well-performing school like Birchwood, you just don't fire Birchwood. I'm sorry.
Okay, I thought you were maintaining your line. Okay, go ahead.
Testing. Thank you. Most of you don't really know me. I grew up in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, and came down here in the 60s where I met my wife, and I got stuck and I stayed here. But the main point I wanted to make, when I was growing up and going to elementary school in St. Paul, I didn't get to go to the neighborhood school because I was very hard of hearing. I had to go to a special school which had an enclave of 4 classrooms for kids who were crippled and kids who were hard of hearing and deaf. And we had a fair number of crippled kids because of poliomyelitis, which there was no cure for back in those days. And those kids, I really felt for. They didn't go to the school I went to. There was a special 1-floor school for them. But I had to take the deaf and hard of hearing classes and all kinds of things in the school I went to. And then later when I got old enough, the teachers would give us dimes, and we would take the streetcars and buses home. A dime for a ride. Can you imagine that these days? And the point I wanted to make was I got to know the kids in my class pretty well. We came from all parts of St. Paul, but I didn't really get to know the kids in my neighborhood because they all went to a normal neighborhood school that was about 4 blocks from my house. In fact, I wouldn't have gotten to know any of them at all, except that my mother, in her wisdom, shoved me into the Cub Scout program when I came of age. And I liked that, so I shoved myself into the Boy Scout program when I came of age. And because of those 2 programs and the church I went to, which was in the neighborhood, I got to know some of the other kids of my neighborhood who I really never got to know in any other way. So my point is this, mainly, after all this windage, is that if you can keep the local neighborhood schools like this open for the kids, I think they're better off than having to go a long ways to school. And that's just from my own experience.
My name is Stefanos Deduchin, and please bear with me. My wife and I have been battling illness this week, and we actually came here tonight and left our 2 sick children home because this is such an important issue for us, and we'll be there Tuesday as well. And we're in the process of moving into a new home, which we just closed in yesterday, right off of Whitney, specifically to be in Birchwood and to be in Iroquois. You know me as Stefanos, but during the day and my vocation and my career, I'm known as Father Stefanos. I'm a parish priest, and I've been so for 20 years. And I'm also a youth minister, and I've done youth ministry in my diocese from the Armenian Orthodox Church. For 20 years, I've worked with junior high school students, and college students for 6 weeks in the summer. I've organized 10-day retreats and conferences. And my experience in those 20 years, and even beyond that from what I've learned from other clergy, is that working in small groups provides the most opportunity for growth, development, trust, and comfort with the leaders and teachers. That's known spiritually. I'm sure we can carry that over academically as well. That's point number one. Point number two, by closing Birchwood, I don't know the exact number, 440,000, 400,000, whatever it may be. I thought we had 200 students here. We have 266, 65. That comes out to $1,654.13 per child. And we're going to close this school for that amount per child, per family, and disrupt their lives and disrupt the other lives that they're going to be going to other schools and expanding their classrooms, and we know all the research with that. Versus $1 million in administration costs. So we'll keep 12 to 15 or 22 administrators, but disrupt 266 plus families. And now my last point is a very emotional one. We left this area in 2010. I took a position with my diocese to be a recruiter for our diocese. A home to rent or an apartment to rent in Birchwood. And so for 3 years now, we've been somewhat struggling in a condition just to be here in this school for our children's education and social and academic development. So now my last point is that I'm going to share a very personal letter, and I apologize in advance to Mrs. Burnt for sharing this letter because I wrote it to her, to the Birchwood School family. It's not bad, very touching. It was December 19th, 2012. Dear Birchwood School family, in light of what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, I have been compelled to write down a few thoughts that I have had about Birchwood over the past few years, but have never expressed it. I speak on behalf of my wife Paulette and 2 children, Jonah and Gloria. Birchwood Elementary School has been a wonderful, safe, nurturing, caring, compassionate, and loving environment for our children. When we moved out of the area in 2009 for over a year, we then realized the true value of this gem, Birchwood Elementary. The administrators, teachers, and staff have always been so loving and caring to our children. It did not take us long to realize that Birchwood is a true family, and it begins with those who work at the school. We feel honored and privileged that our kids attend this school. As we've shed many tears over the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy, our family takes solace and comfort knowing that those children who lost their lives were truly loved by their teachers and knew love up until the last breath they took. We want you to know just how much we appreciate you all. You are all very special to our family, from the principal, the teachers, secretaries, cafeteria employees, nurse, librarian, and to the janitors, maintenance workers, and others we may have missed. You are all so very special to us, and we thank you for loving our children as you love your own family. Our appreciation is really beyond words. I've offered a special prayer for all of you today at my workplace, St. Peter Armenian Church. That's it.
My name is Brad Utter. I have a son in 1st grade and a 3-year-old on her way, hopefully, to Birchwood in a couple of years. I have a unique perspective that I want to bring. I have my son I live about a mile from here, really far away. It takes my son 40 minutes to get to school in the morning. After school, he goes to Niskayuna Community Daycare, and that's a service that I truly appreciate. So when it was an hour and 20 minutes for him to get there as a kindergartner, I said, well, you know, otherwise I'm going to have to leave work and go drive him. And I said, well, all right, an hour and 20 is pretty upsetting. And yes, there were accidents on the bus. So I called and I said, hey, this is bad. And they knew it, and so they made some changes, and I really appreciate that. And this year they've gotten it down to 55 minutes. So my first grader rides from here 10 minutes down there, takes 55 minutes. And again, it's out of Birchwood's neighborhood, and I appreciate the service that they provided. But in perspective for next year, all of our kids are going to be riding 55 minutes to go there if this happens. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. I know they're aiming for 50, doesn't happen. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Matt Behar. I have 4 kids in the Niskayuna School District. 2 of them, my wife spoke already. I have 2 of them here at Birchwood. 2 have already gone to Birchwood. They're in the elementary school. I have 4 kids. They all love Birchwood. I wasn't going to speak today, but I felt the need to represent my kids and to tell you how proud they are just to go to Birchwood. Everything they do take pride in Birchwood. They're so proud of everything affiliated with Birchwood. This is the close edge I read. They wouldn't even give me one of their shirts because they were so proud of it. But most of us standing up here and listening to everything that was said today, we do feel very defensive and feel the need to defend our kids and defend our school and defend the community. And again, the reason is I just don't see a long-term plan here. I would urge you not to put a Band-Aid on one budget shortfall by setting $400,000 just to, there's no long-term plan there. You're talking about bus routes and for next year and how that's effective. What about the new housing developments? I live right off Glacier Hill. The development is actually where Kimberly is right across from me where the Empire development is. There's 11 stops in that one development alone. You're talking about taking those kids and in the future more growth, people moving in, having more kids, that's more stops, and then you're busing them to the other side. It just doesn't make sense. I don't see a long-term plan there for more growth, more developments, more kids coming to the district. This is still Niskayuna, again, even though we're not on Balltown Road near the post office and in the middle where the town hall is. We're still Niskayuna. This is Niskayuna. Glencliff is still Niskayuna. Those are the far ends. Why would you shorten Niskayuna? Why would you shorten the school district? I know you're saying the kids are still getting the same quality of education. You take all the qualities of Birchwood and share them with the rest of the district. That may be true, but again, you're taking away something that is here, and you're not looking at the future for more kids and to keep what we have now. So I know it's getting late. I'll just keep it short. I would just urge you to please look, whatever your decision is, to help Niskayuna be strong in 2014, 2024, and far into the future beyond. Thank you.
Hello. I'm here as a proxy for my daughter Lynn Bowler, who had surgery in Boston and called me from the car on the way here, and I've been hoping that she would show up so I wouldn't have to share her message. But she hasn't arrived, and she may not be in the shape to be talking anyway, but she stressed a lot of points that she really wanted you guys to hear, and I don't know if I articulated as well as she could if she were here, but I suspect she'll be there on Tuesday anyway. A number of the points, as I recall, that she asked you to consider, one of which has been brought up here on numerous occasions. The fact that we're here, as I'm here as a grandparent of 6 Birchwood kids who have just loved this school, another one coming on shortly. But we're here as parents and grandparents, board members, administrators. Basically, our whole point is providing kids with a great education. And we know the dollars are short. But from a standpoint of transition, your 5th graders are going to be going on to a middle school situation. From a financial point of view, it would seem to me logical that Van Antwerp, which she described as a decrepit building, I don't know if it's quite that bad, but she said from the standpoint of long-term planning, you know, you're going to have to pump a lot of money into that building. And if you redistrict, even if you didn't close an elementary school, you redistrict kids, then they're making a transition 1 year, then they have to make a transition again another year. The thing that she liked the best, I guess, was your middle school concept idea, whereby all the 6th graders would get together, I don't know, one of your middle schools apparently, or I guess maybe Rosendale, and then Aerospace, I guess, would stay open. And she said there, your 6th graders would all be together as a class. Even in the middle schools, apparently, that you have, the 6th graders are sort of segregated from the 7th and 8th graders, both from an emotional point of view, and their activities, I guess, their dances and things like that are separated. The 6th graders have theirs, the 7th and 8th graders have theirs. And it would give time for a coalescence of that grade. They would all be there together and talk about, you know, numbers working. It seems like a logical thing, at least as she described it. And then your 7th and 8th graders would be together. And again, there is a difference. Those of you who are middle school teachers certainly know between a 6th grader and an 8th grader. So from her standpoint, that seems to be the logical thing. You reduce transitions, you keep your local neighborhood schools, and again, from a financial standpoint, from everything I've heard and that she shared with me, it seems the logical thing if you want to save the most amount of money on a building. The second thing that she said I should share, I don't know how popular this would be, but she said it should be shared pain, shared sacrifice. And with the board and the administration, it's probably an impossible task, but at least ask the teachers for a pay freeze for a year. You know, everybody says the economy is improving and the TRS and ERS hopefully will come down a little bit, which have been huge budget plungers, you know, in the last few years. But would they consider sharing the pain? And secondly, a number of people have talked about administration, and I don't know what your administrative level is here, and obviously you need a good administrative team, but at least look at that and see if there are any savings there. She also mentioned the pre-K that a lot of you have mentioned. She said if you close these schools and you've used all these rooms up, where are you going to put these if another mandate comes down from God on high? And, you know, he doesn't give you any money. He just says do it, and, you know, that's it. But you'll hear from her on Tuesday, so hopefully I covered the points that she wanted me to make, but thank you for letting me stand in for her.
Okay, hi, I'm Millie Ganatek. I have a 1st grader at Birchwood this year. I have to give kudos to everybody here because you guys have touched on some great points that I think all of us kind of lined up and said, oh, well, that's covered, that's covered. Obviously, the cost, you know, and the savings with Van Antwerp, that's out there. That's something you guys really need to look at. My problem is I don't feel like you guys really have a plan in place. I sat here when my son was in the pre-K story hour with you guys going over Birchwood is closing, you know, these are the costs. I sat here the year after that with the same scenario. For 3 years now, I have been hearing this. And I'm one of the fresh parents, if I want to call it that. I'm sure there's parents here that have been hearing this for more years than 3. So it's something that I honestly don't feel comfortable with your long-term plan. Yes, I love iPads. I'm a Big Apple person. But you know what? Let's focus on the kids' education. They're comfortable here. They have a great staff. They're loving. They give them a great curriculum. And that's, I think, what we need to emphasize and just put our focus on, the kids. Thank you.
I don't know if you get to go twice, but I'm going anyway.
there's just one I was hoping somebody else would make this point, and I waited and nobody had. One of the things that I'm totally astonished at is that, you know, I would assume that we'd consider closing a school as a last-ditch effort, you know, as a last resort to close budget gaps. And yet, we put together a 36-member committee, however many people it was, and each of them spent many, many hours studying which schools to close or how to rearrange schools, all these other things. And I don't see anywhere near that level of effort being put into any other kind of budget analysis or cutting of administrative, anything like that. How can you start with the last-ditch effort, put all that effort into a last-ditch effort, and spend no energy looking at reducing administrative costs or other, basically other programs that could save you money? Where is all that? And the end result is that we've got this proposal that might save us $400,000 out of a $2-some million gap. Where is the rest of that gap going to get closed? How can you make this decision without any plan to close the rest of the gap? Certainly, if you want to do this as part of a plan to close that gap, fine. But show me the rest of the plan before you make this decision here. Show me where all those other cuts are going to come from. So, and I, you know, to reiterate what somebody else said, this is an example of what works in the school district. Plenty of things that don't work. We shouldn't be cutting the things that do work. Do you want to speak?
Sure.
I'm not really sure.
My name's Pam Over, and I love Birchwood so much. I've been here for 12 years maybe, and I love Mrs. Burnett, and I love Al, and I'm so proud to be but I have something different to say. I do. I lived in New Hampshire all my life, and then I moved to Boston, and then we moved here. My husband's from here, and we moved here for Niskiana schools. I love Niskiana schools, and I love Birchwood the best, of course, because I'm here, right? But I also love Iroquois, because one of my kids goes to Iroquois, and I also love the high school, because one of my kids goes to the high school. And I just really don't want Birchwood to close. But if it does, I feel like it will be okay. If that's the thing that has to happen, I just feel like it will be okay. We could be good role models for our kids, because you know what? Rosendale is fantastic too. I teach ASEP over there. It's great. Hillside, I teach ASEP over there. Hillside's great. I don't teach at Glencliff, but I don't think any of us will end up at Glencliff, right? Right. Probably not. Probably not. But I go to Craig too. They're all really good schools. And if this is what needs to happen, if this is one of the things that needs to happen, I think it will be okay. I just really think it will be okay, because we moved here and decided for Niskiana schools. And I like Niskiana schools, all of them.
Okay, I've been dreading this, and I think we'll be okay. My daughter came home crying today saying school might close, but I told her we're all a family, and that's what matters. We're all here, depending on what school you go to. Military kids move all the time. I'm not defending it. I don't want it. Let me stop this. I don't want any school to close. I think it should be from the top down. I think it should be finding revenue. I think that should be the #1 thing. But if a school does need to be closed, I hate to say I don't think it should be a middle school. I have children in elementary school. Please don't boo me, please. I have kids in elementary, middle, and high school, and we all know that middle school is the age where children are going through the most physical changes, and it is the time when children can be lost. And the middle schools here, with the transition, do an awesome job. And to make them transition another time, I mean, the 6th graders freak out about lockers. I mean, it's really an amazing thing. I have one daughter who went through it flying colors. I had a son who I can tell was extremely stressed out. There's a lot of problems, even with their great transition. There's a lot of drugs, a lot of sex. I'm sorry, I know we're in Niskiana, but it happens a lot. But these schools are very much on top of these kids, helping them with their transition. And it's a really critical time in a child's development. I get the money thing, and I'm all about saving the most money. But when it comes to a child's development and which course they're going to take in life, to me that's worth more than $1 billion. And the middle and elementary level kids are resilient, and as parents, we can help mold them. And anybody who has a middle school kid, you've lost the molding for a long time until maybe they get older. But really, the children can survive, and I think it will be okay. And we are strong families, and these children have loving families, and I think we can help them through it. But I will reiterate, I really think we need to look at revenue and from the top down before we do anything else.
I don't want to take too much time. I know somebody said it's okay to say it twice, but I just want to say, I mean, I am all for like being role models, community, we are all together, it might be okay. But I think what I question is how we came to this decision. I think I mean, again, when we talk about long term, that's what concerns me. And somebody said, this should be the last ditch effort. I completely agree with that. It's a process. I think that doesn't inspire confidence at all. I think that's what my biggest concern is. Again, to your point, I agree. It might be okay in the big scheme of things, but if everything has been thought through very clearly, very meticulously, all the alternatives have been considered. The grand scheme of things, if there was a clear planning, short term, long term, and in terms of bridging the rest of the gap, we're talking about 440 from $2.2 million. What about the rest? I mean, has everything been thought through? I think that's what concerns me the most. It's not just being okay or not okay. I just want to put it out there.
I'm Dave Fields. I have 2 kids here at Birchwood. Quick fact, I'm a math teacher in a neighboring school district. I'm also the curriculum coordinator for the high school. I get paid a $2,600 stipend to do, in coordination with an existing administrator in our school who's already an associate principal, who's already getting paid anyhow. He and I together run a mathematics department that other districts such as this are spending 6 figures on. Other districts have found ways, teachers are the experts. That level of administration really has to be looked at. When times were good, okay, times are not good, we're getting by just fine. The Common Core is going wonderfully with us. The 2 of us work very well together. $2,600. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I know we want to have some closing remarks, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay?
So I've been here as the superintendent for 7 years, and so I just want to express our appreciation for your candor and the quality of the discourse tonight. So I think back to my first meeting when I was first hired, and the meeting was a room full of folks. I believe it was in the VA auditorium, right? I think it was VA auditorium. And a similar crowd, and parents were very angry at us about class size and the inequities and disparities between some of our higher section, like 27 in a class, and how come the other school has 20 in a class. And so, but in all of that, it was a similar audience and a similar level of discourse, and I just want to express my appreciation for your candor and how moving your testimony was this evening. And it was heartfelt, and I think we can all agree that we come at things from multiple perspectives. And so, in my position, I'm K-12, and I work very hard to manage the curriculum and manage your programs to keep Niskayuna an excellent top-flight school district. And so, when I see that threatened, that has me worried, and I worry for our kids. Your kids are my kids, and so I just want to say that. It's just very, very much appreciated tonight, so thank you.
I know that this is a very difficult topic for all of us to talk about, and I realize there's been a lot of questions and concerns about the strategic plan, what the long-range plan looks like from a financial perspective. I guess what I wanted to point out to you before we left this evening was that we've been doing 5-year projections for a period of time, at least the last 4 or 5 years. We've been doing 5-year projections. And I think the thing that has so dramatically changed over that time is that if you recall when budgets weren't passed on time by the state, the governor always had a very low figure in terms of a budget figure for schools for state aid, and then the legislature would come in and provide a whole lot of money, and then things would be okay. And if we had made the reductions based on the governor's budgets at those times, and then had all that money come back to us, we would have been crucified for the reductions that we would have made based on the fact that we had so much more money come back to us. I think what's really changed over the last 5 years is that the landscape has taken a dramatic change from what it used to be. The legislature does still try to provide additional state aid to us as a district, but for us, that only represents, as Susan said, about 23% of our overall revenues. The rest of it comes from state aid, comes from school taxes. And when the governor imposed the tax cap, that dramatically changed not only the amount of funding that we could provide or expect to provide, have provided from our community who support our schools, as all of you do here this evening, but the expectation as a whole from residents of New York State changed based on the governor making that change. So that as much as all of us agree with that education is most important to us, and that's why we're all here advocating for us, for our children this evening, and for our school, and for our staff, the fact of the matter is that it's changed dramatically. And so we've made reductions over the last 5 years that at one point we had about 800 staff members. We're now down to about 600. We've cut about 25% of our staff over that 5-year period. We've cut as much money outside of the classroom as we could possibly cut, in our opinion. I mean, we've tried to be thoughtful and consider about what those reductions look like over time to try and preserve what all of you moved here for in the first place. And the difference is that with declining state aid and with a tax cap in place, what we really do have to start looking for is revenue generation, and that is part of what we're talking about as we go through our strategic planning as a whole. And I think that the reason why we're having this conversation about the potential of closing a school building is because it actually allows us to reduce expenditures. As one person got up and said, the only thing that you can do if you don't close a building, if you don't reduce that kind of a cost, then the only thing you can do is reduce staffing. And like I said, we've reduced 25% of our staffing, including administration, over that time. It has decreased, and I don't have it significant, but I think our administration has been cut by the same 25% overall. That we've tried to be equitable in terms of that reduction in staff. So I just wanted to point that out to you and say to you that we really have tried to develop a plan. The combination of all these things, with a downturn in the economy, with how that has affected the pension system, all of those things just made for a bad combination in terms of revenue generation or revenues for districts to be realized. And so as a result, we had to contain expenditures. So I want to assure you, I want you to know that there isn't a day that goes by that we don't have thoughtful conversations about what the future of this district will look like, what the plans should need to be. We want to have your involvement. We so appreciate the fact that all of you came out here on a Friday evening to have this conversation with us, and that we will reach out, hope that you reach out to us, and we'll reach out to you to try and involve you as much as we can as we go through the next few years, because they are going to be challenging, but I think that's part of what makes us great here, is that we all want to rise to that challenge and be successful. So, thank you.
From the district office staff, I guess I would, for our comments, close with this. When I came to Niskayuna schools 3 Julys ago, I interviewed with a variety of members of the community, both inside the school system and outside of the school system, including a number of you who are in the audience tonight. And when I asked people consistently this question, what makes Niskayuna schools so special, I was told the kids, the staff, and the parent community that supports the schools. And so the fact that you're here tonight advocating for Birchwood Elementary School absolutely does not shock me in any way at all, and I would expect nothing less. I want to talk to you, as we move forward, about some different opportunities, some additional opportunities for advocacy. We have a school board meeting on Tuesday night. Many of you have already said you'll be there, and we will expect to see you. On January 30th, and I hope you'll write this date down, and I'll ask Mrs. Burt to put it back out tomorrow for the Birchwood community by email. On January 30th at 6:30 p.m. at South Colony High School, there's a regional advocacy forum that's going to be addressing the issue of the gap elimination adjustment, the tool the state has used to close its budget gap on the backs of public schools. And last year when we held a similar event, we had about 1,400 folks representing communities all over the region attend that program at Columbia High School. And it's really important that our parents, our community, our staff, our administrative team, our board be present at that event, because I want to tell you that all of the legislators in the region, with 2 exceptions as of today, have committed to being at that event. And so that'll be another opportunity for our elected officials to know that we have concerns about the ways that our schools are funded today and some of the implications of not only the tax cap, but in particular that gap elimination adjustment. Additionally, I would echo some of the things that Deb and Matt said. This is a moment in time in this process. This process has become a year-round process. You've asked us to look at the top and work our way down. You've asked us to look at areas outside of the classroom to make reductions anywhere we can outside of closing a school. And I want you to know that over periods of time that work has been done. And so I encourage you to go back to our website where we have historical records posted for you so that you can see the kinds of reductions that were made last year, the year before, the year before that, the year before that, because what's changed is the way schools are funded and the economy. That's what's changed. So we're going to do our level best. You raised some new questions today. We had another question raised earlier today. I heard it represented a couple times tonight about whether the new developments and the numbers of young children in those new developments were counted in the census. They have been, in fact, counted in the census in our work as we move forward. The most important thing, I think, tonight that I could say to you is that we appreciate that you were here, that you love your school. We love your school, too. And that we will do our level best to provide a quality education for all of our children moving forward, including our Birchwood children. So thank you. And David and Deb, thank you again for inviting us to be here tonight.
One more. Wait, one more.
Earlier, I was introduced. I'm Deb Oriole. I'm the president of the board, and I'm not here speaking on behalf of the board because the board is not all here and it's not a board meeting, but just to tell you that those of us who are here are very grateful to have the opportunity to hear from each and every one of you who spoke. We understand the sentiment that you share. We're all parents who have put our children through the schools in Niskuna. We take everything you say very seriously. We have asked a lot of hard questions. We continue to ask a lot of hard questions. We encourage you to continue to speak and seek out answers. We will not make any decision lightly. It's a very important time, as they've said, in our district, setting direction, looking forward where we're going, and we really care about making the right decision. We thank you again, and please, Tuesday evening, we encourage you to come. As I've said to your PTO officers, I don't think we have 8 hours if everyone wants to speak, but we will do our best to make certain every voice is heard. We will be presenting information. The strategic planning process is not by any way complete. What we want to share with the community is what we've done so far, and we can begin to talk about how the community is going to be involved. We're using it as a framework to help us make a decision, and we realized that we needed to couple the 2 activities because we couldn't do them in isolation because we're time bound by budgets and we have constraints. But we are using it as a framework for us to make decisions. We've identified some of the key critical areas that we have to address in making this decision. So you'll learn more about that, and we do encourage you. Thank you very much for inviting us.
And thank everybody for coming. Thank all the speakers. And I'm sure we'll be in touch with you in the future. We do have solidarity ribbons. If anybody's interested, they have 5 stars on them to represent the 5 elementary schools. We'll be getting those out to you. Thank you.